The morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, painting the city skyline in shades of gold. I ran a hand over the silk blouse I had carefully chosen, soft, elegant, the kind of fabric that feels like confidence itself against your skin. My phone buzzed on the marble countertop. Another calendar reminder, another client call, but then a message from someone I hadn't expected. "Hey, just realized I never got your wedding invite." I paused, my fingers hovering over the screen. The words seemed harmless, almost casual, but they carried the sting of years. They didn't come when it mattered. They didn't show up when it counted. And now? Now I was the one holding the pen that controlled who was invited and who wasn't. I walked over to the balcony, feeling the warmth of the sun on my shoulders, and watched the city move below me. Every honking car, every hurried passerby, every distant siren reminded me of how far I had come. Quiet pride mingled with the faint ache of old wounds, but I refused to let that ache dictate my life anymore. I sipped my coffee, bitter yet grounding, and typed a reply I knew would shock them. But first, I allowed myself a small, private smile. This time, I held the power, and I was ready to see exactly how they would react. I still remember that night like it was yesterday, even though it was over a decade ago. I was 23, living in a cramped apartment in Brooklyn, my first real taste of independence. My phone buzzed again, only this time it wasn't a polite reminder. It was a rejection. My cousin, Emily, the one I had grown up sharing secrets with, had just told me she wasn't coming to my graduation dinner. Her words were simple. "We don't think it's necessary. You'll be fine without us." I felt my chest tighten. A lump lodged firmly in my throat. My hands shook, clutching the little ceramic mug my grandmother had given me when I moved out, painted with tiny blue flowers, worn at the edges. She had whispered, "Remember, Anna, the world will sometimes turn its back. But that doesn't define your worth." I traced the chipped edges, trying to anchor myself, trying not to let my tears fall in front of her. I could feel the sting of dismissal in every corner of that tiny apartment, the peeling wallpaper, the hum of the radiator, the scent of stale coffee lingering from mornings of solitude. For a moment, I considered giving up, letting the hurt swallow me, letting their absence confirm some invisible failure. But then I remembered my grandmother's words and the little flame inside me that refused to be extinguished. That night, I made a decision. I would build my life on my terms, not theirs. I wouldn't wait for approval, validation, or even recognition. I would prove to myself first and foremost that I could stand tall, even if everyone else chose to sit out the celebration. I tucked the mug back onto the shelf, a silent promise to myself that I would carry her wisdom everywhere I went. And in that quiet Brooklyn apartment, as the city pulsed through the walls, I felt a spark of something powerful, a determination that would carry me far beyond the narrow world that had once doubted me. After that night in Brooklyn, I threw myself into building a life I could be proud of. I landed a small internship at a boutique marketing firm, where the offices smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. I was green, inexperienced, and constantly second-guessing myself, but I was determined. Every late night at my desk, every rejected pitch, every awkward meeting with clients who barely acknowledged me only fueled my determination. Then came Jameson Hart, a seasoned creative director at the firm, who saw something in me that I hadn't yet recognized. "Anna," he said one evening, stacking my cluttered drafts on his oak desk, "you've got vision. Don't let anyone else's doubts shape your story." His words were simple, but they became a compass I clung to in moments of self-doubt. I worked tirelessly, learning new skills, navigating office politics, and battling the subtle biases that came with being a young woman in a male-dominated field. There were nights I cried into my laptop, staring at spreadsheets, feeling small. But each morning, I reminded myself of the mug with the blue flowers, of my grandmother's whispered encouragement. Slowly, the wins began to stack up. My first major client signed on, impressed by the creative strategy one had crafted from scratch. My first profitable campaign allowed me to pay my rent without worry, and even save a little. Each success, however modest, was a brick in the foundation I was quietly building, one I didn't have to announce to anyone who had doubted me. Outside of work, I cultivated small but meaningful routines that grounded me. I woke early to watch the sunrise, noting the soft pink edges along the skyline. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the warmth against the morning chill. I kept my social media understated, sharing glimpses of my life without revealing the full picture. My family saw only the polished surface, the apartment I decorated on a budget, the dinners I hosted for a handful of friends, but they never saw the empire I was constructing behind the scenes. The city became my proving ground. I navigated networking events, conferences, and late-night brainstorms like a chessboard, carefully plotting moves that would eventually put me in the driver's seat. The thrill wasn't just in the money or recognition. It was in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I could rise on my own, independent of anyone who had once turned away. And all the while, that chipped mug sat on my shelf, a reminder of both the pain that had sparked me and the resilience I had cultivated. It was proof that growth could emerge from rejection, that strength could bloom from hurt, and that, one day, I would hold the power to decide who truly belonged in my life. The invitation went out subtly, elegantly, without fanfare, a simple embossed card, handwritten, addressed to those who had once dismissed me. Among them was Emily, my cousin, whose absence at so many pivotal moments had left a hollow ache I could never quite forget. And yet, here she was, arriving in my lobby with hesitant steps and forced smiles, expecting perhaps to see the same uncertain woman they had known years ago. As they stepped through the doors, I let them take it all in. My apartment was a reflection of the life I had built quietly and deliberately. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city below, casting natural light on abstract art I had collected, each piece representing milestones I had reached on my own. Shelves lined with books I had devoured in long, solitary nights stood alongside polished awards from projects I had led single-handedly. The scent of fresh lilies mingled with the faint aroma of aged leather and fine coffee, a testament to both elegance and care. I watched their expressions shift as their eyes traced the details, the modern chandelier glinting over the dining table, the rich oak of my desk where contracts were signed and deals finalized, the subtle photographs of trips I had taken solo, moments of triumph captured without anyone else in the frame. I saw Emily's eyebrows rise, her lips parting in disbelief. I finally spoke, letting my voice carry with calm authority. "Welcome," I said, smiling faintly. "I'm glad you could make it." There was a pause, heavy and unsteady, as if the weight of years compressed into that single moment. "Anna, all of this, it's incredible," Emily stammered. I gestured toward the space around us. "This is what I've built since the nights you didn't believe in me, the graduations you skipped, the moments you thought I couldn't succeed." My tone was firm but not cruel. The warmth of victory was tempered by grace. "I'm CEO of my own company now. I own the building you're standing in, the contracts on the table, the brand that's changing the industry. And I did it on my terms, without the validation of anyone who refused to show up when it mattered." They shuffled, faces pale with disbelief, guilt, and awe. I let the silence stretch, letting them absorb the full measure of the transformation they had underestimated. It was not about money or trophies or even recognition. It was about proving to myself, first and foremost, that I could rise beyond their doubt. Emily's voice trembled. I didn't realize we should have." I raised a hand gently but decisively. "It's too late for regrets. What matters is what you do next. The guest list isn't just about tonight. It's about who you allow into your life moving forward. And tonight, you're all here not because you deserve it, but because I've chosen to let you see what can happen when someone refuses to be limited by others' rejection." I could see it in their eyes, the slow dawning comprehension that the girl they once dismissed was now the woman who held all the cards. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to fully feel the quiet, intoxicating satisfaction of control. The past could no longer touch me. The power, the narrative, and the choice were mine entirely. The moment of revelation had passed, but the room still hummed with tension, like a held breath waiting to be released. I let them settle into the uncomfortable truth. The person they had dismissed was no longer the same, and this time, I was the one deciding the rules. "Listen," I began, my voice calm but unwavering. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to offer a choice. You can step forward or step aside. But if you want to remain in my life, there are conditions." Emily swallowed hard, glancing at the others, and I could see the flicker of recognition that this wasn't just about wealth or power. It was about accountability. I paced slowly, the polished floor creaking faintly under my heels, and laid out my terms. First, honesty. I will not tolerate lies, half-truths, or pretenses. Every word spoken to me from now on must be authentic, even if it's uncomfortable. I paused, letting the weight of that sink in before moving to the next point. Second, respect. You will respect not just my choices, but my boundaries. I have built this life carefully. I will not allow old patterns of dismissal or belittlement to return. And third, I continued, growth. I want to see you chase something meaningful for yourself, not just coast on what you've always had. Toxic habits, excuses, or grudges, they have no place here. You either move forward or step out of the way. The room was silent. Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I could see her turning inward, weighing whether she was willing to meet me on this new ground. I understand," she said finally, voice tentative but sincere. I nodded. That's the spirit. Everyone else here has similar conditions tailored to their growth. You get one chance, one opportunity to prove that you're willing to evolve. If not, the invitation to my life is closed permanently. I make the guest list now, and it's not about power. It's about alignment, integrity, and mutual respect. I could feel the shift in the room as they processed this, not just my authority, but the clarity of the boundaries I had set. It was empowering, but not cruel. Compassion and firmness coexisted. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was creating space for the right energy, for people who could meet me as an equal rather than a shadow. Finally, I returned to the balcony, letting the city lights wash over me. They were staring at me differently now, not as the young woman they had overlooked, but as someone fully herself. Someone who had taken hurt, reshaped it into purpose, and now held the ability to grant or deny entry into her carefully curated life. For the first time in years, I felt entirely untethered from their expectations. The power wasn't just in my achievements, it was in the deliberate choice to keep what mattered, discard what didn't, and extend opportunity only on my terms. The guest list was mine. And tonight, for the first time, everyone knew it. Weeks passed, and I watched the subtle shifts unfold. Emily started pursuing her own projects with a quiet determination, no longer leaning on old comforts or excuses. Other family members began to confront habits they had ignored for years, each small victory echoing in the quiet satisfaction I felt for creating space for growth rather than grudges. It was remarkable seeing people I had once mourned over start to truly show up for themselves. I often returned to my favorite spot by the balcony, gazing over the city that had witnessed my transformation. The skyline shimmered like a promise fulfilled, the same way the chipped mug on my kitchen shelf shimmered with the memory of my grandmother's wisdom. Every time I touched it, I felt the echo of that night in Brooklyn, the sting of rejection that had sparked the fire within me, and how that pain had led me here. I smiled softly at the thought. The journey had not been simple or easy. It had demanded late nights, tears, doubt, and relentless persistence. But every challenge had reinforced a truth I now carried in my bones. Strength born from adversity was far more enduring than approval ever could be. And in the quiet moments, I reflected on the relationships that had survived the test of authenticity. Those who adapted, who respected the boundaries I set, and who embraced growth became the people I valued most. The rest simply faded into the background, no longer entitled to a place at my table. My guest list, my life, my rules. As I lifted my mug, feeling the familiar ridges of its worn edges, I whispered a silent gratitude to my grandmother. Her advice had been simple, yet powerful. The world may turn its back, but your worth is yours to claim. I had claimed it, nurtured it, and now shared it only with those willing to honor it. I turned toward the city, letting the lights reflect in my eyes. The woman who had once been dismissed, underestimated, and ignored had emerged unshakable, composed, and unapologetically herself. I had learned that control wasn't about holding others down, it was about holding yourself up and letting others rise only when they were ready. And with a calm, confident breath, I whispered to the night, I make the guest list now, and only those who are ready to grow will ever sit at my table.